Joining the fight, the government strikes a deal with private hospitals to free up beds, staff and equipment. The race to retool, Australian companies adapting their products to make critical medical supplies.
And coming up on The Business, grasping for the $130 billion jobs lifeline, a stampede of businesses signed up today to keep 6 million people in a job.
This is ABC Lake News. Hello, I'm Michael Tetlow. The federal government has struck a $1.3 billion deal with private hospitals to effectively merge with the public health system. The arrangement gives the Commonwealth access to another 30,000 beds during the coronavirus crisis. And the government's also considering a request to bail out Virgin Australia, an airline that's teetering on the brink. Here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
An economy in hibernation, airports spookily quiet, and with business drying up, Virgin Australia's come knocking. It wants a $1.5 billion bailout.
We do support a viable, sustainable aviation sector.
The prospect of taxpayers becoming owners of private companies doesn't stop at aviation.
Identify those strategic businesses and be ready to temporarily nationalise, right? Everything from airlines, airports, childcare, aged care, regional bus lines.
It's already happening, in effect, in the health sector.
They are available as an extension now of the public hospital system in Australia.
Tens of thousands of beds, 100,000 staff and hundreds of ventilators in private hospitals will be marshalled for Medicare. Amid fears public hospitals will come up short when the virus peaks. In return, they get more than $1 billion and a promise to protect them against financial collapse.
We will be guaranteeing the viability, along with the states, of all 657 private hospitals in Australia.
Saving businesses more and more a matter of government focus.
We lost something like 1 million jobs last week. This new announcement has probably brought back comfortably more than half of that.
The $1,500 a fortnight JobKeeper payment for full-time, part-time and casual staff is a jaw-dropping $130 billion third instalment in the federal economic rescue. Big numbers tend to boggle, so here's a comparison. The Rudd government's 2 stimulus packages during the global financial crisis were worth $52 billion combined, or about 4.5% of the economy. So far, the government has spent a shade under $200 billion in direct assistance, or about 10% of GDP. What that means for the budget's bottom line is small surpluses expected this year and next are washed away in a sea of red.
More will be needed and more will be done.
Old economic rules and ideologies have been extinguished by this pandemic, so the hand of government will be back in businesses that haven't felt it for decades. For some, it might be for good, or as long as the debt burden lingers from all these rescues, and that'll be a very long time. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
A pop-up coronavirus testing clinic will be set up on Sydney's Bondi Beach after a cluster of cases linked to backpackers. The area has recorded 140 cases, the biggest geographical cluster in New South Wales. Health authorities have identified the high number of backpackers in the area as the source. And there's concern about how far the virus may have spread before restrictions on social gatherings came into force.
We do know that there is a potential risk that other members of the community may have come in contact with infected backpackers, and as for prudency, we want to increase testing.
Testing criteria will be relaxed, so anyone with symptoms in the area will be eligible for a test. The New South Wales Police Commissioner has ordered 6 cruise ships off the coast to go home, describing them as a threat to the state's health system. The Ruby Princess is near Gosford on the Central Coast, but in international waters. 3 more crew members were medically evacuated last night after becoming seriously ill. More than 400 coronavirus cases in Australia have been linked back to that cruise liner. There's a global shortage of some key medical supplies, making it difficult and dangerous for doctors and nurses to safely treat potentially infectious patients. But Australian companies have joined the race to retool and repurpose their products.
No chocolate or chips. These vending machines are stocked with medical masks. Just one way Australian hospitals are trying to keep track of potentially life-saving protective equipment.
In some hospitals, we've seen 6 months' worth of usage in 1 week. What we're trying to do is to have an effective system of distribution with this finite resource at this critical time.
More masks are being made. Adelaide company Tetlow swapping food packaging for PPE to add $145 million to state and federal stockpiles.
For the first month, we'll probably be making around 5 million masks, but from June onwards, we're looking at making 20 to 25 million masks a month.
In Canberra, they're making the masks from scratch, employing 3D printers.
We're building soil moisture sensors for Africa. 3D printing is our bread and butter, so it's straightforward to convert it to doing other things.
Even the motor racing industry has joined the PPE race. Australian racing team Erebus is developing Perspex boxes that can be placed over a patient's bed.
It's looking pretty positive, and we're not trying to save the world, we're just trying to have some options.
In the US, Ford is making ventilators, while in the UK, Mercedes Formula One has teamed up with London University to trial a new breathing assistance machine, a device somewhere between an oxygen mask and a ventilator.
I sincerely think it may actually save many lives by preventing patients from needing to go onto a ventilator and again saving that vital resource for the very, very severely ill.
Corporate cooperation boosting life-saving resources. Isabel Damon, ABC News, Adelaide.
One of Australia's wealthiest landlords is defending his decision to hold off granting rent relief to tenants. John Van Lieshout has been criticised by some for not waiving rent during the crisis.
Arif Memis is trying not to put his dessert business on ice. He's kept a few staff on for takeaways since the ban on in-house dining.
Since the lockdowns, it's just been decimated. I mean, if we get 3 or 4 customers a day, we're cheering.
Mr Memis runs 3 outlets in southeast Queensland. He says Westfield postponed rent at one of them as soon as he asked. But his landlord at South Brisbane says he won't do that until the federal government spells out its plans to help commercial tenants.
Rent is due and payable right now.
The landlord, John Van Lieshout, is one of Queensland's richest men with over $1 billion in property. Mr Van Lieshout says he's a convenient scapegoat in a crisis, but many of his tenants are wealthy too. The Super Amart founder says he plans to help some small new retailers who need it. But take a tenant that has a good business, a holiday home, drives a nice Mercedes and has money in the bank. I think he has a moral obligation first to use some of his own capital. The self-made billionaire says he learned early not to rely on banks or landlords to keep his business afloat. He says business owners have a responsibility to save for a rainy day and that what they're facing now is a cyclone. Lease consultant Ange Condis says some institutional landlords are giving rent relief across the board.
If they want to play that hard line, they're going to end up with lots of empty malls.
Our landlord is demanding rent. I don't understand what planet he lives on.
The Prime Minister's announced a 6-month moratorium on evictions with more details to come. Scott Morrison says he wants tenants and landlords to sit down and work it out. Josh Robertson, ABC News.
Alongside Italy, Spain is one of the worst hit countries in the world. As the total death toll approaches 8,000, residents of Madrid have paused for a moment's silence. Europe correspondent Samantha Hawley reports.
The flags are lowered to half-mast to honour the dead. Madrid's once bustling city squares are eerily quiet. Spain has been in lockdown for over 2 weeks, but that's been tightened further, with only essential workers allowed out of their homes.
Feeling better this week?
Yes, I've stopped crying.
Australians Natalia Lang and Mandy Keillor have called Spain home for 14 years. Now, life is very different.
It's frightening on every level, whether it be the people who are ill and the people who are losing their families.
Spain is following Italy on a deadly path. Now it too has surpassed China with 88,000 cases of COVID-19. The death toll rising to more than 7,700.
It's not a situation like that you can talk to anyone and someone give you advice on how to handle it. It's just a matter of we're all looking at each other going, wow, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Funeral homes can barely keep up with demand.
We are multiplying by 6 the number of normal services we perform in that area.
But the nation's health officials say it's not all bad news.
The increase in cases was about 20%, and since social distancing measures began, it's 12%.
With the toll climbing around the world, France and the US have reached an unwanted milestone, recording more than 3,000 deaths. Cheering continues from windows across Europe for the doctors and nurses who've become heroes. 12,000 healthcare workers in Spain are now ill with the virus, but they're not being taken for granted. Samantha Hawley, ABC News.
COVID-19 is also taking hold in the Pacific, where it's feared the impact could be disastrous. Health systems there are already struggling, even without the burden of a pandemic.
This tropical paradise has been declared a major disaster.
I think we're past the point of panicking. There's still some fear in the air, of course.
The US territory of Guam has recorded 58 cases of COVID-19, almost half of all of those in the Pacific Island region. And there have been dire warnings about the health system reaching critical care breakpoint.
I think time over the next 10 days is critical. I think this is going to tell whether or not our hospital will be flooded with more sick people that's coming in.
There's a shortage of personal protective equipment, but that's something local volunteers are helping with.
So we're focusing more on sewn cloth face masks and then 3D printed face shields.
A US Navy aircraft carrier has also docked at the island after an outbreak at sea. The 5,000 personnel on board are being contained. So far, at least 36 have tested positive. More than 100 cases of coronavirus have been recorded across the Pacific. Several countries, including some that are yet to even record a case, are closing borders or declaring national emergencies. The preemptive action is vital for countries with weak health systems. Papua New Guinea has declared a 14-day state of emergency after one confirmed case. The Australian government has said it will reconfigure its aid to the region to ensure critical health systems continue to function and to help manage the economic fallout. The impact of global shutdowns on these developing economies will likely be severe. From Guam, there's still a message of hope.
So if we can all work together, fight a common enemy, and we'll win.
Pacific Island nations will be hoping for a united front in that fight. Natalie Whiting, ABC News.
Some of those stuck at home in Adelaide are dancing to the beat of a combi. One couple's using their VW bus to bring good vibes to the streets.
Amidst the fear and loneliness, there's still hope and happiness shining bright.
It's a good opportunity for us to connect with them and show them there's still people out there. You know, we all react the same way to music. We all want to dance.
When business stalled for Keith and Leanne due to coronavirus restrictions, they put their combi into gear and hit the streets of Adelaide with a speaker. With just one mission, to drive up spirits in this otherwise anxious and isolating time. Every afternoon and night, the Kindness Combi cruises past health clinics where people are forced to wait outside. It also delivers tunes and smiles to people who are immune compromised and stuck inside.
It doesn't matter how cool you think you are, when the combi goes past with MC Hammer singing "You Can't Touch This," you gotta dance.
Such a simple act of kindness helping a community stay upbeat. Claire Campbell, ABC News, Adelaide.
Showers for Sydney, Melbourne and Hobart, as well as Adelaide tomorrow. Mostly sunny, 29 for Brisbane. And that's ABC Late News to the moment. I'm Michael Tetlow. Stay with us for the business.